you.
And then Adam, he's going to fill in for Francesca. He's not as attractive, it looks like.
I disagree.
All right, guys. So today we're going to be talking about extending reality, or alternating reality, excuse me. But I would like the three of you, we could start with you, and then just come down the line, introduce yourself, talk about what you do in the space, and then from there we'll start our discussion.
Amazing. Thank you, J-Chains. Hi, everyone. My name is Justin Malillo. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Mona. Mona is a world-building platform built on Web3, enabling any creator to build, mint, and sell really high-value, one-of-one 3D assets as NFTs for the Metaverse.
All right. So I'm Stan, Head of Strategic Partnerships for Ready Player Me. Ready Player Me, for those who don't know us, is a cross-game avatar platform where you can create an avatar in one place and then use it persistently in all the others. We currently have 4,000 something developer partners, and it's great to be in Miami.
Jake Sally, COO of Jadu. We're an augmented reality game built for mobile augmented reality. We've been focused on integrating a number of different Web3 avatar partners, ranging from Meebits to Cyberkongs, Deadfellas, and many more.
Hey, I sat down just to say, sorry that Cash is so hot. He went past your panel about 5 minutes. Because we did that, we're going to offer all three of you some spots on the channels if you want it. Come me up later, and we'll get you on board. Round of applause for these awesome entrepreneurs.
All right, there we go. All right, guys, so AR, you spoke about AR. What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge of incorporating AR into, the Metaverse ecosystem, or where we're going, with, I say the Metaverse, we'll just say that, versus VR? Because I think, that's the biggest race, right? Is it the VR or the AR that's going to win the game?
Yeah, so I've produced about 40 virtual and augmented reality experiences, so I've got a good range going there. I don't think there's going to be necessarily a winner. I think you'll be using each for different use cases, much in the same way that you use your phone for a lot of things and your laptop for a lot of other things. Virtual reality at this point, it's really good. I think there's some technical layers that will get better and better, but from a hardware perspective, it's insane how high quality it is right now. But the arc of adoption, I think, is pretty linear at this point. I've done a lot of demos for people with VR. People fundamentally don't like putting things on their face, this gentleman aside. And so from an augmented reality standpoint, I think the adoption curve, there's this potential for this hockey stick moment, right? And what I've seen to date anyway is that headset-based AR, while interesting, again, slower curve. Mobile augmented reality, everyone already has the device that can do really, really top-notch AR, the type of AR that was previously reserved for headsets. Most of that is possible now on a mobile device in meaningful ways. So that, for me, feels like the big watershed moment. That's what we're very focused at Jadu, which is delivering high-end augmented reality gaming for mobile.
Nice. Justin. Well, I'm a Justin, by the way. I go by J-Chains, but my mom named me Justin.
Your name is Justin, too?
We got to stick together, man. That's what we do.
That's what
Justins do. We're just bonded by life with our name. Kind of piggybacking off what he said, what do you think is going to be the most important, aspect of the VR, AR kind of mindset as we go into these, the battle of the headset versus, the AR where you can just hold your phone up and see the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. My background is actually in AR as well. I worked at Magic Leap before co-founding Mona. Magic Leap is a really big AR startup that has raised a ton of money, and they have a really fantastic headset. But one of the issues, going back to that discussion about hardware, is that a lot of the hardware, well, one, you have to get past that, people wanting to wear something on their face, and it has to be like a very low form factor and comfortable. But right now, hardware is very, very expensive, particularly on the AR side. But luckily, through what we can access on our phones, you can actually have a really compelling, immersive AR experience, which, by the way, huge fan of Jadu. And for Mona as well, like, we're very focused on supporting creators in what they want to build for the Metaverse. And that could be a 3D playable experience that you can access through your web browser, a desktop web browser, or that you can access in VR or AR. For us, definitely agree. I think there's going to be different use cases for different experiences. You can have a really compelling, fully immersive experience via VR with really fantastic hardware right now. But I think you can have a different type of experience, one that involves your real world surroundings. And personally, to me, that is more compelling, and that's what I see as the future with virtual content merging seamlessly with the world around us. But yeah, I think you're going to have different flavors of different types of experiences depending on the hardware and the targets there. But definitely very excited for AR in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Stan, I'm going to ask you this question, and then it could be a discussion, at that point moving forward. If you guys have anything to chime in and stuff, if you've watched the last panel, if anybody out there, the panel that we were talking on, we were talking about the metaverse, and with what Meta's doing, Zuckerberg is spending billions and billions of dollars with the prize of being several trillion, right? So he's just like, I don't give a fuck if I spend $10 billion because I'm going to make trillions. With all of that money going into VR, is there any company equally putting money, attention, resource into that much AR? Where is that going to lead? And Stan, you can go first with that.
All right, so, excuse me. I think Zuckerberg has been pretty vocal about his vision of not just VR, but also AR. Like they had that collaboration with Ray-Ban where they had, the glasses. That was pretty cool because, again, to your previous question, I think one of the issues is actually accessibility and how easy it is to wear and use ultimately. So they've been pretty vocal about that, but to me, there's a lot to prove still. Like when we talk about the trillions, that's in the uncertain future, it's all great, but my crystal ball is no better than, anyone else's. I mean, Zuckerberg's is maybe slightly better than mine, but, I think it will be about the, how those two converge ultimately, switching between VR and AR in a seamless experience. So making it accessible to the wide public, that looks very cool, but I'm not going out, in the street with it.
Maybe in Miami.
Maybe in Miami, yeah, you're right, yeah.
I need to get a better look at that. I'm trying to figure out what that is. Okay, all right, nice.
I would add on to kind of what you're saying. I think the big difference is Meta is taking this approach, which has been predominantly VR first, and they've been slowly expanding into concentric rings, into different types of technology. And a lot of these pieces of technology are not actually the headset itself or necessarily the metaverse or the digital space. It's all of the pieces of technology individually that are contributing to this thing. And since this is an AR panel focusing on AR side of it, augmented reality fundamentally is like inputs and outputs. And it's lots of real world inputs creating outputs that are specific to the digital experience. And my bet, to go back to your question, would be that Apple is probably investing as much as Meta, probably in a less lavish approach, but they're getting to do real world testing with a lot of that technology through the mobile phone, right? As you're like, okay, your phone has LiDAR built into it. It's really wild that that's the case, right? And you get to do a lot of testing and say okay, now we understand form factor wise, we can get this to the size of a phone. Now we can start to think about how do we put that display and all of the kind of inputs into something that could be worn on your face in a smaller form factor. So I think it's really just thinking a little bit more deeply about when we're talking about this idea of the metaverse, there's so many fundamental layers of technology that go into building that. How can you push those out quickly, iterate on them, and then ultimately start putting them together? I will say, just as a side note, I'm not a big fan of Meta, but the headsets they build, they did a decade worth of R&D in 3 years, which is insane.
It's kind of tricky because now Meta sort of has a monopoly on the headset market. There are others, but everyone is talking about Quest 2, Meta Quest Pro, and it's that's kind of, to me, the tricky thing and why I'm excited about this panel and these types of conferences, because I think the types of experiences that we build, they have to be, not beholden to an app store necessarily, especially when you have one company that's kind of controlling all of those experiences. So, yeah.
That's one thing that I actually heard that kind of pissed Zuckerberg off, and what gave him the motivation to do what he's doing, because he has software on someone else's device. He doesn't have the device, right? And I think that's why the Quest or the Oculus was such a big push for him, because he's like, listen, my platform has to either be on an Apple or a Google phone. I don't get any say in there, so I want a device. And I think that was maybe like one of his big driving factors for, the push to get into the headset. And I think that they'll control that market. Who knows? But let's stick back to AR. What are, and this is for the young person inside of everybody, but like, what is the most wild thing that you can imagine that might be being built as far as like, hey, instead of a pair of glasses, it's a contact. So now you put a contact on and that's your AR.
I don't think contacts are feasible. I don't know. I mean, maybe one day, but I've tested a lot of tech, and there's probably something in some dark meta dungeon somewhere, but you're like, people barely like to put something on their face, much less stick something in their eye, so I'm out on that personally. I think biometric feedback is gonna be really interesting. Again, inputs, outputs, right? That's fundamentally AR, and being able to take things that, whether it's like changes in your heartbeat or how you slept the night before, and have that feed back into a digital experience that you're having, I think is like really, really interesting. And so much of augmented reality is focused on inputs from the world around you. I think when that kind of gets centered back, because humans are extremely selfish and self-centered people, is when it's very, very personal. It's about me, like how am I feeling? How is my heartbeat raising? I think that's gonna give it that personal touch that really like anchors people into things.
Yeah, so for me, in the long run, this ends with, human brain to machine interface, where it all gets projected in your brain. That's the long run. But in between now and that very distant future, there's probably something like just a pair of glasses that you put on, but that actually, feel good and is socially acceptable, so you don't look like a dork. And then you sit at home, and you don't have a TV because it's all projected in your glasses. Like, all of those experiences are kind of in front of your eyes now, and they just mix everything that's around you with the experience that you want to have. So that's the way I think makes most sense from a user perspective as well. And then, sorry for the TV manufacturers, but that kind of dooms them.
Yeah, the human brain interface, like the brain computer interface, is kind of scary to me. And I can't, likewise, I've seen, the patents for contact lenses, and I mean, I've never personally seen them or tried them, but so I can't like speak to it, but that's kind of frightening, putting electronics like in your eyes. And also reminds me of Black Mirror a little bit. I think we're getting like into that territory. But yeah, I agree. I think like a super low form factor, like a pair of glasses would suffice. And I think we're getting there. You're seeing, I think like two of the biggest companies outside of, what's really interesting is with the Quest, or like the Meta Quest Pro now, they have something called pass-through. So you actually can have an augmented or mixed reality experience just with the VR headset. There are sort of like different methods of actually like delivering that content though. So they're using pass-through, whereas something like Magic Leap or HoloLens is using slightly different technology. But it's just about kind of getting that form factor lower. And I know like even Magic Leap 2 now is a much smaller form factor than the first one was, but it is still a pair of goggles, right? So I think we're getting there. And to me, I agree with kind of what these guys are saying. I think it is more about just like a lower form factor pair of glasses. But at the end of the day, and also what you're saying about the the biometric feedback, I think that's really key too. It's because it's not just about like the visual, but it's like how the rest of your body relates to the experience. What I'm most excited about on the experience side is actually having, I think multiplayer is really super important for AR. And I think there's so much that you can do with that input from just getting that information from the device's camera about your surroundings and your environment that can actually inform the type of experience you're having and how it interacts with your world. I think as hardware will get better, it'll kind of like almost fade to the background with a really compelling experience.
We've been doing a lot of multiplayer testing for mobile AR right now, and I can completely double down, because I was kind of skeptical. I was like, and ours is avatar based, so it's not first person, it's your third person controlling an avatar. When you have a friend's avatar in your space, even doing nothing, we had no game built out for it, it just fundamentally changes your space. And I think that is so much of what's magical about augmented reality. Yeah, you can put billboards and all sorts of things, but to have someone share presence with you through a digital avatar that is a personification of them, especially for folks that maybe don't want their physical self present, it's really, really interesting to project your digital identity into a friend's space. So I think the social multiplayer side of it's about to be really, really intense.
Let's piggyback off of what you just said there, because my next question was going to be about in a lot of this in this space, and a lot of things that we have to do is sometimes we have to trade off privacy or security for convenience, right? And I think with this, it could maybe fall into that. What are some ways that you see people are going to have to give up some security or some privacy? I mean, you've heard the stories of people with their Oculus on, and it's got the 4 cameras, and maybe they got a bag of drugs or something going on, and somehow that gets to the cops, right? Like, who knows if that's actually how it all worked out or whatever, but like these kind of things could happen when you're opening your world up to eyes. So what other ways can we like mitigate some of this safety and security protocols?
Definitely keep your drug den and your AR play space separate. I think is baseline. Just I think it's an intimate thing in a large degree. Again, inputs, outputs. So like you are going to inherently be giving up some of that. Like Pokemon Go, it's your location. There's a lot going on right now about MetaMask and your IP address. There's a small level of trust falling that has to happen in this, but it's really if you want it, like you don't have to do AR experiences, but if you want the best AR experiences, it may be where are you located, what's the weather like, where are your eyes looking. That was the big one for Meta recently, or over the last 2 years, is they're like, oh, they can track what your eyes are looking at, which is a little scary, I think in a lot of ways, and I think it's scary because of who has it, not necessarily the fundamentals of it. I do think people are pretty laissez-faire about so much information on the internet. So I never stay up at night worrying about it, but I can appreciate that it's something people think about.
Yeah, I think it will be a lot about personal preference. So think of it this way, to your point, location-based entertainment, AR. Well, that implies location, right? So the system needs to know where you are, what's around you, and all of that in order to give you the experience. So there's no solutions, there are trade-offs. Another big one, Alexa. Like, a lot of people love the convenience, but she needs to be listening, right? She needs to know your habits so she can suggest the right things. And we can go on and on and on because, like, it's about, I don't have an Alexa at home. I don't like the idea. I'm more privacy-minded, so I just don't get it. But it will be, like, on an even more fundamental level, decentralization is a lot about ownership, and that means owning your own decisions and actions. So it falls down to that, really. Like, if we want to move away from all of this scare about privacy and all of that, yeah, like, the tools are being built. You can live in a very private environment, but it's not probably going to be a very fun one.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to if you want a really rich, immersive experience, you're going to have to give up some of that privacy. But then to me, it's like, okay, what is the organization that I'm giving this information to? And what are they going to do to it? What are they forcing me to opt into? That's sort of, the other side of it is, can I trust this organization? Yeah, I mean, it's really tricky, but I think that's why we need, organizations that you can actually trust that aren't going to sell your data and do horrible, terrible things with it.
Or systems just where you can, that's been the biggest thing, is like the obstruction of the truth, rather than, I think if Meta had been straight up and like, hey, yeah, we're selling this data, like, do you want to keep using Facebook? Good chunk of people would be like, I don't really care, I think being able to get that kickback as the person that's data that it is kind of like that next layer that folks should be pushing towards.
Love it, love it. This has been a great conversation. Now, I think we are running short on time here. Is there any questions from anybody? Yes, Sheesh.
So I keep hearing a lot of talk about privacy, and I think maybe it's because like I'm doing some research now that's like changing my thoughts on it. But it's kind of be like a half of a comment and a question. There's like a metadata layer being built. Like a lot of people that built AWS, that built Google Cloud, that built all of these centralized cloud systems are toying with technology.
Thanks, bro. Yeah. So a lot of the cloud deployment specialists that worked for AWS and built Google, built all these different things, they're toying with code to make it so that you can store information without encryption and kind of sharding it in a way across multiple nodes where you'll be able to put private data onto basically the cloud, the internet, in a decentralized way that allows, builders like you guys to be able to call the data, run algorithms on the data without actually getting access to the integrity of the actual data. If you had something like that to play with, how much benefit would it be for you guys? Because I see that being something that it's like when I read the Bitcoin white paper and everybody told me I was nuts, this was going to change the world. I'm having that moment now with this whole metadata layer like talk. And I'm interested, like, to a lot of the builders, just to hear what they think about it. If you guys had a metadata layer where you could put private data, how would that change your flow, and would it make it get better?
I don't know if it's going to make the flow better, but one thing that keeps me up at night, right, is this idea of, okay, you're like, okay, two people interacting in a shared experience. When you can start to scale that to quite a few people, hundreds, thousands of people, and you're kind of getting, let's say it's something that is tied, maybe let's stick with sentiment analysis, right? You can do this with VR, AR is like someone happy, is someone sad, and like how that as an input can impact the AR experience output. If you're like, hey, collectively, there's, let's say, 500 million people that are using the Jadu app, super successful. The sentiment collectively around folks is people are generally down today. How can that change what the AR experience is that you're experiencing? Maybe there's a grove of trees that are part of the game experience that if collectively everyone's sad, the trees start to wilt. If collectively everyone at scale is really happy, the trees start to bloom. I think that can start to be a really fun input layer for it. Yeah.
So what you're describing is kind of aligned with the way we think about the metaverse in general at Ready Player Me. So if you look at any of our statements, one of the things you'll notice is that for us, the metaverse is not a single app, but many thousands or millions even of different apps with different layers that connect them. So we are aiming to be the identity layer. And people look at us and they see the avatars and, oh, like, such a good looking avatar. Nice, well done. We're like, yep, that's fine. That's our go-to market. But ultimately, the long-term game is actually metadata, to your point. Just, the personal metadata in an anonymous way, in an encrypted way, in a way that is also ubiquitous. So, all of the different nodes of the metaverse can read it. And you, as a user, can move between those nodes and have your persistent identity. So what you're saying rings a lot of bells for me.
All right, guys, that we are out of time. Thank you so much, guys. If you want to chat with them more, obviously, the door's right there. We're all going to head out there, so make sure you stop them and chit-chat, learn more about what they got going on and what they're building. Thank you, gentlemen, very much, and thank you, Miami.
Thank you.
Thank you.